recorded this boundaries video in February, and it was based on the content of boundary work that I have been doing with my clients and other research administrators over the past several years. And then the reason why it sort of came up as like a very big aspect of time management is that what I found is that it didn't really matter how much I set boundaries or determined this is going to be my schedule or whatever it is that I was going to do. There were certain factors that were either in or out of my control that derailed my day anyway. So it was almost as if setting the boundaries was a futile exercise because they'd just be violated by the people who I was trying to set boundaries for. Like, here, don't sit outside my office and wait for me at 6 a.m., until I come into the office. So I talked to my wife, right? Because I was at this time, this was many, many years ago, before I had sort of understood that before I could expect other people to respect my boundaries, I had to respect and maintain my boundaries. And so I remember being in a job where I felt like, and this job, by the way, was the job that I was my boss. So I was running my own business. And I was constantly at the beck and call of my clients. I was constantly working. I was exhausted all the time, right? And the whole point of starting my own business was so that I would have freedom and be able to maintain my own schedule and not get overwhelmed and so on. But yet here I was, overwhelmed, exhausted, constantly working. And I said to my wife, I said, I think I'm just going to go back to corporate. I don't really feel like I'm getting what I was hoping for out of working for myself in terms of the control over my schedule and that kind of thing. And she said, it doesn't matter. What does it matter where you go? Right. And I was like, I don't understand what that means. And she said, I've known you now for, at this point, I think like a decade. And she said, wherever you go, you are the one who works really hard. So you'll set boundaries, but you're the one who then will violate your own boundaries and say, oh, I'll just take this call later on, or, oh, I'll just work after hours, even though I said I wasn't going to. So I understand why you want to go to another space, right? You think that, okay, if I just change jobs or change what it is that I'm doing, that's going to be what allows me to now have this time that I'm looking for. But she was like, over the years, we've seen that that's not the case. I've learned that when something hits me like that did, there's usually an element of truth in it, unfortunately. So she wasn't wrong. Where I was didn't matter. What I was doing didn't matter. If I wanted to clock out, I had to make the decision. I had to figure it out. And I was going to have to be the one to make it happen. And honestly, that kind of blew my mind. So my first lesson in boundaries was the moment that I realized that if I wanted to have a life where I clocked out and had time for myself, that there was only one person. So that was my first lesson. If I wanted to have a life where I clocked out and had time for myself, there was only one person who could make that happen, and that was me. Lesson 2 came when I was working one night, and about 4 p.m. I said I was going to stop as soon as I finished doing something. I can't remember what it was, but it was this one thing that I was like, I'm going to stop right after that. While I was doing that thing, I got an email in between, and it gave me that pang of anxiety that you're like, I have to resolve this. And so I stopped doing that first thing, moved into the email thing, and then did that, and then got distracted with another email, eventually came back to my original thing at 8 p.m., which at that point, I was still at the same point that I had been at 4 p.m. because I had paused to do the other things in the email. Now, this thing wasn't due till a few days from when I got the email, like the email but it was the thing that I had been emailed about was not due for a few days. But it had popped up, it had given me the pang, and I was already on the momentum train, and I just felt like the thing needed to be done. It was a hornet that was there waiting to be completed, and I simply had to get it done. But I was tired and cranky and upset, and I wasn't thinking straight, and then another email came in, and then it was also something that needed attention, and that's when I realized, as research administrators, the work will always be there. Always. The work will always come. There is no moment where I'm going to feel like I'm done. I'm good. I'm finished working. I can close up for the day. I can close up forever. The only person who gets to decide when I'm done and clocking out and when I get that feeling is me. It's not going to come naturally. I have to say the words, make the decision, and clock out. So if you decide that today I'm doing 10,000 things and make yourself doing it and make yourself do it, then you will work until the middle of the night.
And if you decide that today I will work until 4 and then I'm clocking out, and make yourself do it, regardless of what the consequences are, right? People are going to be upset. They're going to be like, why are you clocking out early? You're not investing time. You're not dedicated. Those are all things that will happen. But the actual closing of the laptop and starting to step away, that's an action you have to take. I have been on and worked with people on all sides of that coin. And my biggest takeaway is that when any of us as human beings decides that we're going to do something, it doesn't matter what it is, we say, like, clock out, like, decide in our souls. I mean, like, for real decide, not just saying the words to somebody, like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to clock out, like surface level, right? Then we do it. Until then, we will say the words, but they'll be surface level. And then we will bend and break our boundaries constantly based on the circumstances and continue to be frustrated. So there is a moment within where it clicks into your soul and you're like, I am done working after this time. And after that, once you have made that decision and decided that that's who you are and what you're doing, then your subconscious and your body will do all of the mental hopscotch necessary to make that okay for you over the course of time and practice. But if you really in your soul still feel like it's something you need to do for value, worth, because there's so much work, you don't want people to think badly of you, whatever the reason is, then you will say the words. But when you get that email at 4 p.m., you will do exactly what I did and continue along that path, right? That back and forth is part of the growth process. It actually doesn't mean anything bad or anything good. It's just part of the process of actualizing clocking out. It's getting to the point where you realize that work will always be there. And that's the second lesson. Work will always be there. You are the only one who decides when it's time to stop working, and you are the only one who can set and maintain that boundary with yourself. Now, let's talk about what happens if you do clock out, right? Because there are consequences. So let's touch base on what happens if you do clock out. 4 p.m., shut off your computer, just so that we can massage out that next step as we go through boundary setting. In this scenario, you decide for real in your soul that you're going to clock out, and the next day you turn off your computer and your work email is off your phone and you go along your merry way. How do you deal with the feeling of guilt that comes after that? How do you feel after taking that step? And what do you do with that feeling of guilt is another story altogether. Now, if you keep working and decide to go back to overworking to alleviate that guilt, right, then you'll burn yourself out. If you stop working, you feel the guilt. The key thing to remember is that feeling that guilt and dealing with people asking questions is part of the process of boundary setting. People don't like boundaries. If you set them, people will push against them. That is part of the process. It doesn't mean that you stop setting them. It means you keep doing it until everybody's comfortable with the new normal. You are changing the way you interact with work. You physically forget about the people around you. Your body is actually going to reject that because it's new, which is why you feel guilty when you clock out. But that doesn't make it wrong. It is not a sign that you should be working more or that you did the wrong thing. It's just a sign that you haven't been giving yourself enough time off of work, and now your body isn't sure what to do about it. It's not sure what to do when you make that decision. Retraining your brain to think of work differently is a practice, and it's not a one-time thing that you decide, I'm going to do this, and then it happens and you feel good about it. And doing this starts with boundaries. Now, I get a lot of questions about the relevance of boundaries in time management. So let's massage that out by talking about how I typically think about the day. You have 24 hours. You lose X number of hours to sleep and general life activities. You have a lot of things to do. Your day gets condensed, and so do you, right? Because like if you sleep, your day is now 16 hours. If you sleep if you have to shower and do other things, like just various things that you have to do to exist in the universe, take up a certain amount of time. When you have a lot of things to do, the day gets condensed, and so do you. The more boundaries you set, right, the more space you can create in the day. The less boundaries you have, the more you feel like you're always doing stuff, always tired, and never have time to do anything. Because now remember, we said work will always be there. It'll keep coming. So when you have these other things that are taking up time in your day, and you say, okay, now I have this time is what's left for work, work will automatically say, I'm going to expand to fit the whole thing. Now, in episode 8, we talked about how notifications can set you up. So maybe you start a labor cost transfer or a cost transfer or grant review, and it never actually gets done because of repeated interruptions that can come from notifications for your email. And we also talked about how if you allow people to schedule things during your flow time, then you no longer trust yourself in terms of having the time to do the work that you think you're going to have the time to do. And then you don't have the time. Your system doesn't trust that that's the case, which means that it's going to start feeling that sense of anxiety again. The boundaries are the key to making sure that the whole system that we're creating actually works, because you can put any system in place, but if you let somebody come and bulldoze it every time they want something, then it's not really a system that is applied as much as a system we put on a wall to look at. Think about it, right? If a train stopped every time it saw someone on the side of the road, what are the chances that it would make its scheduled stops? The train has to set boundaries around when and where those stops will be. Those stops are published and everyone shows up at that time and gets on the train. If they miss it, they get on the next train and the engine keeps running. Unless you're taking the T in Boston, in which case then it's basically good luck and I wish you well on your quest as a brave research administrator. Good luck. We're all with you. The bottom line is that the more unexpected things that happen in a day, the longer your day gets. And suddenly you're starting to see in your head, you're like, that's exactly how that happens. I can see how that happens in my day all the time, because that's how a research administrator's life is. It is the unexpected. So that's a given. So the goal then is to have as many parts of your day nailed down as possible and create flexibility around your day to accommodate the unexpected. Ultimately, we need to have a little bit of sponginess in our days because that's the life of a research administrator. But if you know you'll have the unexpected happen 3 times a week, then now it's not unexpected anymore. The exact nature of the issue may be unknown right at this moment, but you know that something's going to come up. They'll take up about 6 hours of your week, every week, whatever that thing happens to be. Now, this was a very uncomfortable idea for me. I remember when I was massaging it inside and it felt really uncomfortable because I honestly didn't see how this could work. But I ultimately came to understand that we're not trying to get to perfection. I mean, no one is. It's the enemy of done. It's the enemy of progress. It's the enemy of anything awesome, honestly. We're trying to get an idea of what an ideal looks like so that we can work our way into that direction. Once you know what you're looking for, what the end goal is, your subconscious actually starts to work for you and find opportunities to make that thing happen. But before that, it's an amorphous idea of like, I want to work less. I wish I could clock out. I wish I had more time. And I know we need more people. And I know we need more time or maybe a different job. Often things within and outside of your control. But those are not things that give you the opportunity to actually do something and make a change. This offers a third option where you can take control of some of your day. You're still not going to be able to have a lot of control over the fact that you may need more people in your department, but you can customize how that impacts you, your day, your life, your work, and so on. But regardless of why we're going through the exercise, when I started to think about setting boundaries around my time, it made me feel a little icky. Like what I just said was code for I don't care about my job and I don't want to do a good job. I didn't say that, but in my mind at the time, saying I want to set boundaries and clock out translates to that. Now, all of us have our own stories about why we don't feel like we can clock out. For that, I love therapy. I've been in therapy for years and years and years. It's something that we worked on together. We figured out why I struggled so much taking my work email off my phone and saying, I'm sorry, I'm not available after 5, or whatever my boundary it was that I was trying to establish. With my therapist, we worked through some of my childhood issues and other issues in terms of value and worth and so on. And with my coaches, I worked on actualizing, operationalizing what I was learning in therapy. And you put those two things together, and it really is a very powerful combination. But as I was doing this work, prior to that work, saying that I had boundaries made me feel like I was doing a bad job, or at the very least, I wasn't doing a good job. I ultimately learned, though, that having boundaries doesn't mean not being diligent or not concentrating on quality or it doesn't even mean that I don't care. What it actually means is thoughtfully prioritizing your time, creating clock in and clock out times for yourself, and not letting work bleed into other parts of your life that actually create that restorative time that make you more productive. I'm going to share a video by, I believe his name is Ryan Johnson, where he talks about recovery time and how important that is. Now, at some point over the last decade or so, these expectations from many workplaces are actually wildly inappropriate. So it is so important to recognize that the expectations that many organizations have of the amount of time that their staff should be devoting to work And often these are silent expectations that are set by the culture of the company. They are not published anywhere, but you know that if you leave exactly on 6, you're demonstrating that you do not care about this company and you do not care about your job and you will not get a promotion, right? These are the things, right? These are the things that are wildly inappropriate and they infringe on our personal space and our life. And sadly, they have become commonplace as just the way things are. And now these boundaries that we put together actually create the framework for really great work to being done during the time that you're actually working. And then the freedom to truly appreciate and enjoy the time that you aren't.